All right, everyone, we start off today with Jen Psaki and some of her words for the Democratic Party. I'm going to tie this in with actually the left in general. She sort of straddles the line. She's like a missing link liberal, sort of like maybe the equivalent of Ted Cruz or something like that. Not necessarily principled far leftoid, but certainly capable of being just enough outside of the neoliberal core to occasionally castigate them. And that's indeed what we see here, talking about the Democratic Party effectively having no leader at the moment, fundamentally correct, and being rudderless. I mean, they got crushed by Trump, and now they just don't know what to do with themselves. Now, there are Democrats that are arguing for an overhaul of the party and the way that it works in order to try to make it work better. The problem is most of the people that are making those suggestions fall into one of two categories. Completely anti-pragmatic leftoids, so like the Bernie Sanders AOCs, and then self-serving opportunists like a Tlaib or an Ilhan Omar. And they're sort of just in it because the Justice Dems in many cases overhauled some House seats. So you've got that particular coalition. Here's the thought, though. The problem is this. Attempts to overhaul the Democratic Party from the left will fail. The closest that the left ever came in recent memory to sort of overhauling the party and going back to the bleeding heart Carterism of the 1970s was fucking Bernie Sanders. Now, if you look at a map of where Bernie Sanders got his money from, where he was winning, etc., it's very, very interesting. It lines up with Republicans. This was something that the neoliberals actually pretended was problematic. I see it more as he was the working man's Democrat at that time. The problem is that doesn't translate very well to a national campaign. Oh, sure, you've got plenty of captive left-wing voters in the cities, but you're going to win them anyway. You've got a bunch of rural voters in states you probably can't win. Who is left out in the rain? Suburban voters. People in the D.C. suburbs and shit like that. They wouldn't have swung for Bernie if he had been nominee. I think he would have lost by an even greater margin than Hillary Clinton. This is something that escapes the notice of leftoids. If you mention this to them and you say, look, demographically speaking, he probably wouldn't hold a candle to somebody like Donald Trump and would have done worse than Hillary herself. They start screeching and throwing poo around and stuff like that. They go crazy. But Psaki is fundamentally correct. Who is the leader of the Democratic Party? It can't be Harris because she got absolutely gobsmacked. So it's not her. She's also disappeared off the face of the earth at the moment. She's been humiliated, and she is currently crying into her 15th bottle of Chardonnay since the election, I assure you. Well, 15 might be an understatement, but something like that. It's not Biden. We all know the reason why Biden stood down, because the party literally forced him to, and then he turned the screws and backstabbed them. I believe that story is fundamentally true. It can't be Pelosi. Yeah, she's running again, but she's not going to be majority leader. It can't be Schumer because he's too big of a wussy, and also, again, he's minority leader now in the Senate. It can't be Gavin Newsom because although he definitely is lined up to try to run in 28, he's not very charismatic. He comes from a deep blue state, and he's got a load of baggage problems. Whitmer, Hochul, who's your actual party leader? I guess it'll be Pete Buttigieg or something like that. At least the trains will run on time and fairly regularly. She is fundamentally correct. Democrats, they don't know what they're doing. They're not even performing a party autopsy. They're too torn up over Pennsylvania right now with the Casey McCormick race to even do anything else meaningful. A handful of liberals are coming out and saying, hey, that might be the problem. This might be why you lost. Jen Psaki, AOC alluded to it only a couple of days ago. Well, the Democratic Party needs to do some soul searching. When AOC is telling you that the party that she hyper supports, because it's getting her all of her abuela's money, is having a problem, when she gets it, you might want to take heed. That might be a good idea. Fetterman gets it. It's funny because you see like the Manchinite, well, post-Manchinite at this point, Democrats in the far left effectively saying the same thing. Fetterman seems to think it's a joke, by the way. He's laughing constantly about these things and appears to love trolling almost as much as Trump or Elon Musk. So everyone has at least one redeeming quality. For the most part, that whole Pol Pot dude might have fallen through the cracks, but other than him, everyone has at least one positive thing about them. With Fetterman, he's good at trolling. Did you see that with his shit-eating grin with the Israeli flag with the Palestinian protesters in D.C. a few months ago? That was pretty funny, actually, regardless of your thoughts on the war itself. Jen Psaki has identified the fundamental problem with the Democratic Party. They broadened their umbrella so much that they're incapable of appeasing all the main cores of the party. I spoke about this fucking years ago. You've got 3 poles within the Democratic Party. At any given time, under that schema, it's very, very difficult to get all 3 of them to work together. You can get 2 of them. The neoliberals are just a bunch of opportunists. They control the money, etc. The blue-collar, working-class union Dems, they form another pole. They are left-wing on certain economic issues. Otherwise, they're more conservative, actually, than the neoliberals are. And then you've got the far left, the Bernie Sanders, the AOCs, etc. These groups do not interact well with one another. Microcosmically, the Republicans have a similar problem. You've got the neocon core, and then you've got everything else. But the everything else has congealed. So there it's only dipolar, not tripolar. It's a little bit easier, therefore, because you can just speak to party loyalty, partisanship, and stuff like that, and at the end of the day, 90% of those people are on board. It is much more difficult when you have a very virulent far left, and you have those union Dems that, for the most part, can't possibly agree with the far left line. So identify the problem, correct, you have, wonderful. Identifying a solution still eludes them. Maher came out a couple of days ago. He was saying the same thing. Well, the Democrats got completely ass-blasted. And it's their fault. They're the ones that ran their campaign into the ground, and it never made any sense to begin with. Some of us were warning about that for months. As soon as Kamala was in there, the election was fundamentally over because there was almost no possibility that enough people were dumb enough to take her seriously to elect her. And then it trickled down ballot. Not as much as a lot of Republicans hope for. You look at the House right now, they'll have 3 or 4 seat majority or something like that. It's pretty lukewarm. I told people, don't expect a red wave there. Did rather better in the Senate, by the way, so at least Trump's appointments, most of them will get the nod. They're still trying to knock out Matt Gaetz. I think they're more worried about him than anyone else who's been chosen. Other than maybe Zeldin, but that's been a back burner sort of thing. I don't even know why. I would think that he would be the one that you'd be worried about because he's the one more likely to run for the presidency at some point in the intermediate future. But again, the Democrats can't identify these things. They don't understand. Apparently, they've lost their understanding of statistical mathematics. They've lost their sense of understanding of demographics. They still think that if you use the mythical BIPOC Latinx duality, that you're going to get votes and shit like that. It doesn't seem to have worked too well. And there are some people trying to warn them, hey, you need to retool things because clearly it didn't work in the last election. No, most of them are just being stubborn. They're playing the blame game right now instead of doing what they should do, which is blaming themselves more broadly, figuring out what went wrong, and trying to ameliorate it. Now, I support if the Democrats do a party of JFK 180, if they reform themselves and rise from the ashes like a phoenix, number one, it would be very surprising to me. Number two, at the very least, there'd be a second political party in the United States I could consider voting for. Because I don't want to have to magically default to the Republicans for everything simply because they're acting kinda sorta sane. It's really like, I like Trump, I like Rand Paul, I like Boebert and Luna and a few of these others, but I'm not a Republican. Can you give me a Democratic Party that's got like, a double-digit IQ? Because right now, you've devolved into a mollusk, actually. That's about all. Peace out.